Welcome. Can you not tell it's Mercury Retrograde, which always affects travel and communications, and I have to smile because best laid plans can go slightly wrong. So the upshot of it was Monday, I ended up pushing the bike to Monchique. Took more than an hour and a half, but purely because of the heat. It just knocks all your energy out. It's been something of a heat wave here. So it's always like expect the unexpected, see it for what it is, which is very much a theme of this reality as well. So there's also another theme of there's things that buck the trend as well. So for example, I don't know what it's like these days, but their sort of normal method was with a utility bill, say an electricity bill, you get a statement. I'm not getting into the sort of legalities of it, but for the average person, you get presented with a bill asking for so much money, and then if you don't pay it within a certain time, you get a final demand written in red. And then if you don't pay it, then you'd have your electric supply cut off. And that's the general pattern with everything in this reality, except one thing, of course. I'm sure you've all heard of such things as a national debt and a world debt. And the world debt seems to be the question that nobody has the answer to. Who is it owed to? And who would it be made payable to? Isn't it funny how, if it's a utility bill, you know the company, it will have its name and address and where to send payment to. But the world debt, isn't that strange? Another example, actually one of several examples, and as much as anything else, it revolves around belief systems and things, and also the information you have at the time on which you base an opinion. So, for example, if I was to say to you, how many years are there between the years 2046 and 2106? I'm sure most of you would say 60 years. And you wouldn't be wrong if you are using the basis of that calculation of a year being 365 and a quarter days. It would be quite true. And it actually comes out as 21,915 days. But of course, that doesn't take into account the coming pole shift. So it's actually 40 years if you count in days. It actually comes to 14,580. This, in the sense of linear time, is talking about a future event, but you can see in that 21,000 down to 14,000 is a reduction by a third, which is what it talks about the end of days, things will reduce by a third. Time will tell on that one, of course. You don't have to believe it, it's entirely up to you. But it also highlights as well, many thought, oh, the end of the Mayan calendar, 2012. There was one that bucked the trend in Jason Brashears, who said, no, it's not 2012, the calculation is wrong. And again, it comes down to the assumption that it's always been a 365 and a quarter day year, which before 713 BC, it was a 360 day year. So that's two examples that I can give you Actually, I was thinking of quite an well, I find this quite amusing. If you take the Bible literally, it's the passage in Luke 22:10. Now, notice before I even sort of talk about that, 2 and 2 and 1, 22:10, that makes 5. So from that, immediately, it's talking about 5 senses. And it's actually talking about an internal story. But this is a funny thing, taking it literally, like a Christian literalist would do. And I'm using this as an example, not purely to pick on a particular group. So, for example, if I was to go to Monchique and I buy bottles of water, and as I'm coming out the store, I might say, smile or say hello to somebody. Now, if they're to take that story literally, it says, when you see the man who greets you, who's carrying a pitcher of water, follow him into the house, go upstairs to the right-hand room and it's fully furnished. It just so happens on this land, the room, as you look at them to the right, is the spare room and it's got a bed and chairs and things in it. So it's sort of like an outplay on this physical world. But perish the thought of having 50 crazy Christians all turn up but believing in a literal story. But I thought that's quite an amusing take. You could even sort of say to somebody, excuse me, are you a Christian? Well, see that man over there, he's got a picture of water, I think you better follow him. Of course, it may be that you get arrested for stalking or something if you were to actually take that story literally and follow it to the letter. On the subject of letters, generally, and in particular after an untimely end of life, there will follow an autopsy to determine the cause of the end of life. But let's just look at that word autopsy. What do you see in it? Because what I see is auto spy. I also see A.U. from gold, top and C, or top C. Can I point to an external example of that? The answer is yes. It's in the UK, it's Channel Islands milk, particularly the Guernsey milk. It's a very creamy, distinct cream colour milk. Because if you remember in the last video, I said the expression in biblical verses is milk and honey. The colours would be white and yellow, and obviously if you mix white and yellow in this physical reality, you get cream. Well, the gold top milk, the Guernsey and Jersey milk, when it was the old glass milk bottles, the foil top was gold, whereas the pasteurised milk was silver. There are other variations, but the gold top, the cream. So when we consider the surrender of self, the handing over of the lower conscious minds, the passover to the subconscious, when you have that internal surrender of self, I've got to avoid, I think, using a certain word, D-E-A-T-H. I understand it might be sensitive. Even if I'm not talking in a particular, I'm talking in this context, but so the ending of life, but the internal ending, shall we say, this is where the autopsy comes in, because it's looking inside. This is why artists will show saints and angels and such like with that sort of halo. It's a gold top. So it's an internal thing that's actually going on. So when you find the gold within, which is at the top, and you see it internally. There's your autopsy. Everything in this external world is like a mirrored play out. And it is much a guide as it is with an agenda for the external world. It requires that discernment to see what's going on. Hello, we have Damiana just jumped on my lap. Mercury Retrograde again. But no, it's not put me off my train of thoughts. It's nice when she comes and sits on my lap. So let's give you some examples. What's just happened recently in the UK, the, shall we call it, civil unrest? Well, that is a huge message for humanity. When you internalise it, a word you could say when there is civil unrest, there would be an uprising. Well, what about the uprising inside oneself? That is how you find that gold top. You see it inside yourself by having an uprising going on within oneself. It's the rising of the Christ consciousness that is being alluded to, but shown in a very negative polarity. Isn't it interesting? You have also this theme of polarities, of pick a side, vote red or vote blue, and so on and so on. And how you have this word polarizing, and in terms of the majority accepted view of the Earth having polar regions. So there's something there to sort of weigh up internally and externally as well in that. But there's another theme in the political world, and the best way I could describe that is that it's questionable about the two Democrat candidates or potential candidates for the presidency. Were they originally men, or are they women, or are they transgender? Well, the message is actually very simple. As long as you don't sort of fall for that pick a side and yes they are or no they're not. It's more just seeing what the simple message really is, and particularly with the world of politics, the simple message is all is not what it would first seem or appear to be. There is a truth way below the surface that is being concealed. That's all you really need to take from that. Don't get involved, don't give your attention to it. But we're getting tail switched here now. Actually, yeah, talking about things that buck the trend, and I'm not taking this any further as to suggest that the Sphinx was a lion, because it wasn't. That's just one of those stories that have been put about. But Junus, when he sits down, sometimes he will sit and he will put his paws straight out, because that's one of the things that's often cited. Oh, cats don't sit that way. Well, there's always something that shows the opposite. And if I can get a photo of him when he's sitting like that, I will, and I'll put it on a community post and actually show you. But it's something that's always used to cite, oh, the Sphinx was a lion and it faces Leo, and that whole misleading story of going back to fantastical ages that man's been about for in its present incarnation, in its present form. Was it the Sphinx is supposed to date back to some ridiculous time like 12,000 years ago? But there's a huge hole in that. Well, if there are things that date back to that age and that were true, how come there is nothing for the next, 7,000 centuries before we start seeing anything else? That alone is a red flag with that. And now we have a true chronology of this external reality, the dates can be found. I refer you to Archaic's channel, and in particular Chronicon, to find all that out. Sorry about the jerking here. We've got cat tails and things going on here. So the next video, I'm going to give you another example of a sort of play out of a story which occurred to me that is happening here. I'll make that into a separate video in its own right. But yeah, going back to the question, who actually is this world debt owed to? Isn't it funny how that information doesn't seem to be easy to find? Can it even be found? I suspect where it would be owed to, and I suspect that the whole thing is built on this disgusting practice of usury anyway. But it also calls into question, as most nations seem to have a national debt, that therefore they're living beyond their means. They're squandering what are our resources. There's something gone seriously wrong, or rather the story was put about that politics, governments and so on are there for your best interests, but their spending is out of control. And there's definitely something that definitely needs to be looked at in one way or another. And there needs a radical change in that. It's the word repent. As Neville Goddard says, it just means a radical change of mindset. It's something you need when you're presented with new information and you're maintaining that it's going to be 60 years between 2046 and 2106. It's not that you're wrong. It's just the information you have is not the full information. And this has been the main problem with a lot of things. Reading things literally, not seeing things for what they are, and not being fully aware with all the information that you need. But where do you find that information? It comes back to a biblical quote of "Seek the kingdom within and all will be given to you." It's not about filling your head with every little minute fact and detail, because it is so easy to get lost in the detail, and obviously things could be presented from certain angles which are going to shape opinions and things, but it doesn't mean they're true. But if you want to find the truth, then the place to start, the easiest route you can take, is to look inside yourself. It does sound like a crazy thing to say, but that's only when you come to it from a very materialist perspective and not having an understanding of what it actually means. But a lot of these messages like this, they're encoded partly so the language of the time cannot alter their meaning. This is why things are written or said in parables rather than actualities. But then it also requires us to then look at these things, look beyond that superficial level, look at what these things mean. For example, it will use an expression about wineskin. That refers to the human body. When it talks in the Bible about the church, again, it is talking about the physical body. The whole dialogue is an internal one, not to be confused with what goes on in the outside world. The disaster of taking things literally and externalizing them has been shown over and over again. I can think of an area of the world we call the sort of Near East or the Middle East, the focus of attention there has primarily been caused by taking things literally, and add on to that, it works like a pair of dividers, shall we say. So there would appear to be two or possibly three opposing factions, but like a set of dividers, the compasses that you need to navigate, they actually join at the top. Comes back to autopsy and finding that gold top, finding the cream, finding the true wealth and abundance within oneself. Right, I shall close this video now. As a reminder, and it would really help me at the moment, 3-card tarot card readings, healing, or the befriending service, or if you just want to have a chat as well. Description, let's get it right. Contact details are in the description. Can you not tell it's Mercury Retrograde? But the thing is, don't get annoyed with these things. Just see it for what it is. It's all in the moment, and that moment has now passed. So I'm not allowing it to pull me into a negative state. It's just see it for what it is, observe, but don't get sucked into these things. Anyway, yes, so it's basically on a donation basis if you do need any help, and it would certainly help me. And I'll show you in the next video, there's lots of projects and things that do require some financial input to achieve them. Not that they're unachievable, but it would make life easier, i.e. a brush cutter rather than just a handheld secateurs for cutting through masses and masses of bramble. But we persevere, we use what we have, we don't have that feeling of lack, and we just vision, and before you know it, these things will come. That is the best sort of recipe. You can check back on previous videos. I've given you plenty of testimonies over the videos from a personal perspective, and shared testimonies of other people as well. And you can also see in comments under each video, so you'll find some interesting comments as well. People having their experiences and sharing those. This is the thing with the Mercury and Mercury Retrograde. It's travel, communication. The communication travels, so it's very much all part of that. So hopefully this has not come out suffering too much from the Mercury Retrograde, and the message in it is clear for you. But if you're struggling at all at this time, worrying about anything, then do come and talk to me, and we can turn it round and show you, just like the word autopsy, there's a positive and a negative to it. It's being able to see both and sitting between the two without picking a side. So as always, unconditional love to you all.